Okay, I'm going to go live. Okay, so we are now live, Judith. So welcome everybody. This is Judith Rees from For Baby's Sake, and I'm Dr. Asha Patel, clinical psychologist and founder of Innovating Minds. And I'm going to start with Judith to tell us, Judith, about the work that you do and why you do it. Okay, so we are now live, Judith.
Oh, is that?
Go for it.
Okay, hi, Asha, thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. So, as you said, I'm Judith Rees, I'm Director of Operation at the For Baby's Sake Trust, and our flagship programme is the For Baby's Sake programme. And this is a whole family response to working with domestic abuse. And when we mean whole family, it means that working with every member in that family. So that's the person who's experiencing the abuse, the person who's using the abusive behaviours, and then and the baby's children in that family. But we start with pregnancy, so starting while the baby's in the womb. So really early intervention to really break intergenerational cycles of babies being impacted before they're even born. We know violence can begin in the womb for that baby in the research, and we can come on to some of that later on. So really, that if we want to get to the root cause and break cycles of domestic abuse, we have to work with every member of the family. So our programme, each parent has their own practitioner that works through, overcoming being in a relationship with this domestic abuse, but for the person using abusive behaviour, really building a trusting relationship to understand what lies behind the behaviours. So many of the parents that come onto our programme have had such traumatic early experiences in their own childhood and were once babies. And so it's fine having a really trauma-informed relational approach to work with both parents. Then they're more likely to make those changes that are needed to break those cycles and to keep everybody safe within the family. And most importantly, emotional regulation. We know this, when people are able to emotionally regulate, they're able to keep not only themselves safe and take responsibility for themselves, but that is the way how babies and children are able to emotionally regulate. But they need their parents to be regulated in order for them to be regulated, not the other way round. Also our programme is really underpinned by attachment theory, really ensuring those bonding is beginning before baby's born, but then babies born into homes where they can have that secure attachment to their primary caregivers, mothers and fathers. And we know that research is really important for babies to have relationships with their fathers when it's safe to do that as well, for their own identity and sense of self as they grow up. Okay.
So it's an amazing programme. It's amazing work that your team are doing. What is it for you? Why you? What is it that drives you to get out of bed, like do the duvet flip in the morning? So what is it that keeps you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, and I love that duvet flip. And I do bounce out of bed in the morning. I'm a morning person. My whole career, 33 years in the NHS before I joined the trust as a midwife, nurse, working with family nurse partnership teenagers, but also working as a safeguarding nurse as well. And what drives me is to be able to work with those most vulnerable families and to be able to equip them so they can go on to have healthy lives and fulfilled lives and reach their potential. So it's the hope that we can give families, and being able to, I've worked with the trust now for 8 years, and it means we've been able as a charity to be innovative and to work in ways that may not have been tried before, or you know, really siloed working, especially around domestic abuse. But for us to be able to safely work with all the safeguards that we have in place, working with the multi-agencies teams, we are able to provide this support for parents. And also within our programme, we work up until that baby's 2. So it's time where we're able to pace the work, and for parents to be able to work on their own past traumas so that they can be available. So for me, it's working for a great organisation, but also be able to make those changes in people's lives.
Amazing, thank you. So what's the impact of domestic abuse on babies? A lot of people that I talk to seem to think, well, they're really young, they don't understand, or well, how can they be impacted if they're in the womb? So what is it that you see and know in terms of the evidence and base of research in terms of the impact of domestic abuse on babies and really young children?
Yeah, so the impact is huge. In terms of physical, we know pregnancy is a high risk time for domestic abuse, that it can escalate in that, not always, but you know, the research points that it does escalate for many reasons. But we also know of the science of the raised cortisol in the womb. So if mum is stressed, those levels of cortisone are high, and we know that can go through the placenta to the baby. So the babies can be born hypervigilant. So it's given that intervention to help mum understand, give her equip her with the resources to be able to reduce the stress and relaxation without blame or shame, you know, because there could have been other children. So it's in a very non-judgmental way, but we know the neuroscience now. So it's been able to work with parents, that psychoeducation alongside building that relationship, but also for the dads. And we know in pregnancy, it's a time of motivation to want to write a different script, want to, you know, question their own beliefs and where that behaviour comes from. So the baby is a real motivator for change as well. And then by working in pregnancy with both parents, it means then when the baby's born, they're already starting that bonding process. And we know if parents are bonding with their babies, then it's going to be a more, you know, safer environment. And just want to read from the Harvard Centre on the Developing Child report, establishing a level foundation. It's that, you know, it tells us that young children can and do experience serious mental health problems that are comparable in severity to what we observe in older children and adults, and they can have lasting effects. And highly negative emotional experiences in early childhood are not forgotten. They are built into the architecture of the developing brain and can have a sustained impact that extends well into adult years without the right support. And trauma from people's own experiences of being parented can be triggered during the experience of becoming a parent themselves, the ghosts in the nursery, due to the attachment process. So all of these things, you know, the evidence is there. So it's about putting early intervention, putting services in, like for Baby's Sake, that's able to provide this for our families.
Yeah, so I think you touch on the evidence base, and really in terms of the long-lasting impacts that because maybe we assume cognitively that it doesn't impact babies. You think, well, actually you start to make a logical reasoning to yourself that, well, they don't have the understanding, etc. But actually what we know, it's the body and brain keep the score in terms of we've seen the research, the evidence base behind that. So thinking about then early years settings. So the Healing Together programme is supporting early years settings to create systemic change so that babies and young children that are affected by trauma like domestic abuse are able to get support from the frontline practitioners, so they're the nursery workers in essence. And by making a systemic change means because they might not necessarily know that this children has been impacted by domestic abuse or and therefore the importance of actually if we just change the environment so every child receives a trauma-informed sensitive way, because actually for me, why don't we do this approach to everybody? Why is it that you have to experience trauma to receive such a kind and curious and empathic approach by safe, grounded adults? So why is it important that at even early year settings are starting to consider about the impact of trauma like domestic abuse and what their role plays?
Yeah, I think it is exactly what you say. If we assume everyone, like you said, has got trauma, or why don't we have those conversations? So, but I think it's for those professionals working in those settings to think baby or young child comes with parents. What are what conversations, how are they receiving parents in those settings? Are they maybe looking behind behaviours that, or the way the parents are speaking about their child, but then those sort of observations of the baby as well. So it's a two-way process. So think more beyond the baby and the child. And relationships, I think I said it earlier, relationships heal relationships. So it's about the relationships that those practitioners are having with parents. But I think we also need to think wider about our workforce. 1 in 4 people are impacted by domestic abuse. So obviously there are going to be triggers in the work, and especially if they're sensing there's unhealthy relationships with the parents or baby. It's about then equipping those practitioners to understand their own biases, their own triggers as well. So settings have the support for staff as well as thinking about the babies and children. So it's that wider. And for those who are listening, please go to the For Baby's Sake website, forbabysake.org.uk, and we've developed, because of this systemic change, some resources and trauma insight resources that are free to download that really help practitioners understand what that psychoadversity is, what it looks like, what if we don't interrupt that cycle, what parents need, but also what those children that they do know are impacted, what do children need to feel safe, because it is about feelings of safety. And we've also developed emotional safety plans. So these are able to use, for parents to use as well, to think what they need on that perinatal journey in pregnancy, birth and beyond, about what support they need from others, what support they can give to their parent, but actually what does that baby need as well in utero. Like you said, we know babies can hear from around 24 weeks, so they're going to hear that loud angry voice, or that sort of eggshells as well. But those emotional safety plans we've adapted so professionals can use them, so they can think in their own reflection or their supervision space, management space, what is it they need as well, so they can able to think, to feel safe themselves in that work, and so they can be present to really observe what's going on for those babies and children and hear the child's voice who can't speak.
In terms of those emotional safety plans, how would a practitioner introduce this to a parent? So have you got any advice on how they could start and engage in this conversation?
Yeah, we've got on our website alongside these, which they're very simple templates, because that we wanted them to be used, that there's not lots of words, there's symbols that they can use as well, and there is guidance there, but it's just it's a changing conversation tool. So can we look together about what does it feel like, what is it you need right now? Those really simple questions is, what do you need right now, how can I support you? And then they're able to fill in those and reflect, and then share them with other the parents can then share them with other professionals as well, so they've not got to keep repeating those conversations about what they need as well, or what might be the triggers. But definitely
the fact of not repeating stories is really important. So if you're thinking about wanting to implement trauma-informed practice into your organisation systemically, really thinking about your assessment process and the questions you're asking, so we're not re-traumatising parents, carers, to talk about their experiences, their adversities that they've been through, because actually that is really detrimental to their mental health as well.
Yeah. And it's asking them how they feel. because we know it's the feelings rather than reliving events that's really helpful. And so many parents, and again, that's what I would say, is engage the dads in the process as well, and think who else is in this baby or young child's life as well, and grandparents. You know, it is thinking that the whole system that's around that baby. But just sometimes parents have never been asked, you know, are you okay? Or I notice, and especially with stressed parents, or, you know, maybe presenting highly anxious, ask the question and don't be fearful. And especially when it's around, if you're wondering if there might be domestic abuse in the household as well. So on our website, we've also got a resource about asking questions about whether the relationship's healthy or not as well, and some really prompting questions that feel safe to ask and not intrusive, which can then build the parents' confidence, because it's around trust, isn't it? There's a lot of shame around domestic abuse. So it's really breaking down those barriers so that people do reach out for support, and we can break cycles for them.
There's a couple of times that you've mentioned about dad being involved, and we know domestic abuse victims can be, it's not gender specific, but we know the statistics is predominantly females that are impacted by domestic abuse. And your work also works with the adult that harms.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because actually that's not common practice. Works with both, I guess, victim and the adult that harms, but For Baby's Sake you do. So why do you do that, and what is the impact of you doing that?
Yeah, the impact is huge, because co-parents do come on. So our programme is that both parents come on. That we have no agenda about whether they're together still as a couple or not. But, you know, there's a pregnancy, so they've been together quite recently. But what we also know from other research, and what we do find in For Baby's Sake, that if someone is a victim of domestic abuse, they want support and help for their partner, even though they're being abusive. And so they're more likely to seek and not feel judged, and not feel fearful. When you've got a pregnancy, quite often victims won't seek the support because they're of fear of babies being removed from their care. But actually having a service that they know that the person causing harm, their partner or co-parent, is going to get a service, then they're more likely to engage as well. And that is indeed what we find. What we find by taking both parents, and we don't bring them together in sessions, they have their individual journey. So they're able to go at their pace of understanding their behaviours. And for dads, so often there isn't a service for them, you know, perpetrator programs, but you can hear our trauma informed that we don't use the labelling of perpetrator. Yes, they perpetrate abusive behaviours, but by calling someone a perpetrator, you're already adding another shame. So we, you know, seek and work with them to take responsibility for their behaviour, but also take responsibility for being able to regulate their own emotions and not looking to someone else to do that. But what we do find is the majority have had horrendous things done to them as a small boy, as a small baby themselves. But also, you know, we do work, like you said, with mums that are also perpetrating abusive behaviours. But again, being able to do what we call in our programme the Deeper Inner Child module, and when we're able to pace and take them through that, they're able to work through and really understand that child within that's hurting, and be able to recover from those insecurities and stop using those sabotaging life patterns, and start that process of embracing and understanding and healing. So, and sometimes they've never had their feelings validated, and then it's accepting what happened does not define who they are now, and they can be present and to be able to write a different script for their baby that's being born, but without shame and blame.
Right, thank you for explaining that so in-depthly, and I hope that has helped people to understand as well. So I know sometimes there's quite a common split in organisations not wanting to work with both parents, but For Baby's Sake, the centre focus is always the child. So it's always coming back to why are we doing this, and it's actually for the children. And
It is.
support both parents non-judgmentally, without shame, from a trauma-informed, sensitive way, actually, they also have a better help seeking experience, which obviously long term, whether it's future mental health difficulties or physical health concerns that they have, that they can access support because they've had that relational experience, that ability of co-regulation taking place, and access a safe space that's they've probably previously not been able to have access to.
Yeah, and quite often parents will safely separate, but within the programme and with the safety of them both having their own practitioner to work through that. And we always work within the multi-agency team around a family, because quite often when you've got domestic abuse and babies and children, then they've got some elements of social care that are involved. So it is around, you know, with consent, safely sharing. But yeah, that safe separation within being supported with both parents, it increases safety as well. But what we find is that they then keep the focus on the baby, and the baby's then not used as another tool of to abuse, which we know happens. And then, you know, then all of those splits within the family. So at the end of the day, yeah, it's all about protecting babies' brain and their future emotional well-being.
Right, thank you so much, Jude. So there are plenty of resources available to download on For Baby's Sake website. So I do encourage you to go over, have a look as well at Healing Together programme if you're interested in systemic training for early years services. And do keep a lookout their social media pages, the work that they're doing, access to free downloadable resources, and drop us any comments or any questions that you have. We'd love to answer them, and we'll pick them up later on. Thank you so much, Judith.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Asha. Have a good day, everyone.